Hello, my Tekken babies. I'm going to show you how to play Tekken 8, how to get good at it, and most importantly, how to have fun with it. And I'm going to start with the most important fighting game advice you can possibly hear. Now, this advice is not technical, so if you're only interested in the technical aspects of Tekken, you can skip over to the next section and continue from there. But I recommend listening to this part because, honestly, it transformed the way that I look at fighting games when I was told this information, and it had such an incredible performance impact on me. And I just want to share it with the world. So the most important thing to keep in mind when playing Tekken or watching Tekken or doing anything Tekken really is that the pro level meta and the things that pro players are doing do not apply to you until you're close to that level. So most often what happens with fighting games, you see these combos, you see these tutorials, you see these streams, and people are doing incredible things. Incredible skill is on display. But yo, that doesn't apply to you. And there's nothing wrong with that. When you go into the basketball court, you don't expect to be Michael Jordan or Nikola Jokic. When you go, on the football field, you don't expect to be sports metaphor. So you shouldn't expect to be a pro level player in this game. You might get there one day and it might be a goal for you, but let's dial it back. Don't even think about that pro stuff because all you're gonna do is create this feedback loop in your brain where you're constantly reinforcing to yourself that you're not good enough. And you might not even realize that that's what you're doing, but you know what? You are good enough. You'll be more than good enough because with these tips, you're gonna be an above average player after some practice. So the thing about Tekken 8 and all fighting games is that if you wanna be an above average player, all you need are great fundamentals, quick thinking, and reliable controller inputs. It's actually not as hard as you might think. And even if you've had bad experiences with fighting games before, following these three pillars will get you to a spot where you're not only having a lot of fun, but you're also winning a lot of matches, which is pretty cool, right? All right, my Tekkenites, let's talk about the four main buttons. So left punch, left kick, right kick. Tekken is usually referred to as a 4-button fighting game. And although you're probably going to be using more buttons, these are the four main buttons that you do your moves with. Now, the thing you want to know is that these buttons are actually called 1, 2, 3, 4. And I know that might sound kind of weird, but bear with me. So 1 is left punch, 2 is right punch, 3 is left kick, 4 is right kick. A little bit like weird, right? But that's because everybody's playing on different devices. If I told you, press X, that means something else on PlayStation than it does on Xbox, than it does on your keyboard, than it does on whatever input device you're using. So that's why we have this number system. It actually, once you wrap your head around it a little bit, it actually makes things organized for us and it's pretty good. I don't like how most fighting games have different button naming systems, but for Tekken, it's straightforward, easy to memorize. 1 is left punch, 2 is right punch, 3 is left kick, 4 is right kick. And actually, you know what? Take a moment right now. And if you're able to, throw some punches in the air. Like throw 4 or 5 punches in the air right now, or maybe even more if you're feeling like it. So I'm guessing if you actually took the time to do that, and if you didn't, pause and do it. I'm guessing if you took the time to do that, you use both of your arms if you have them available to you. And that's what's so great about the Tekken layout. It's organic in a sense, the way that you can translate real movement into a video game. So your punches will interface, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, that kind of thing. It makes sense once you start practicing with it and you enter this flow state where your buttons feel organic to real life movement. And it's just something that clicks in your brain the way that Tetris clicks in your brain when, at some point when you're playing Tetris, you're like, oh, I know exactly what I need to do to line up the next Tetris. And if you're bad at Tetris, I mean, don't let Tetris scare you away from playing Tekken 8. What am I even saying? Anyway, there's also the shoulder buttons on a controller, R1 and R2 or, whatever. See how it gets weird as soon as I start using those? So there's the heat button and there's the rage button. We'll talk about those later. But right now, just remember, 1 is left punch, 2 is right punch, 3 is left kick, 4 is right kick, and these buttons, they interface in a very natural way. So that brings us to the next part of this video, how to combo easily. Fighting game combos are usually where a lot of new players struggle. They try to do too much, they try to do these super fancy combos that do like 50% damage or whatever, but you don't need that at all. And actually, when you're playing at the high skill level, it's extremely rare that one of these combos actually happens. So don't even worry about that stuff. In order to combo easily, you just need to think about that punching example that I just gave you. If you have both arms and you're going to be punching in the air, chances are you're probably using both of your arms. So think about how real motion translates to your controller when you want to accomplish a combo. When you're sitting there thinking about like, oh, I don't even know where to start, just start alternating buttons. Try doing left punch, right punch, left kick. See if that does something for your character. Not every character is going to have a combo for every type of button input or situation, but a lot of them will. So you can do these really easy 3 to 4 button combos and you can just figure them out on your own. It's very satisfying, it's very rewarding, and it's kind of you teaching yourself how to play the game, which is really awesome. Now, obviously these combos aren't doing a lot of damage, but they are still fantastic, and having a lot of these in your repertoire is going to help you a lot. The other thing about combos that's really easy to do in Tekken is that a lot of characters let you just mash on one button to do a very simple combo. And I don't want you to think about this as like, oh, it's the noob way of playing or whatever the case may be. Nah, this is just the game. It's how it was built. It's how it's designed. Like, for example, if you pick, I think Nina is what I'm thinking of, and you just hammer on the, I was about to say the A button, on the 3 button, you're going to get a combo if it connects. If you hammer on the B button and forward, you're going to get a combo. You're going to get all these combos. So pressing the same button over and over again, or pressing the same button in like a direction and over again, you'll just get combos. And I don't want you to feel bad that these combos do not too much damage. Like, these combos are essential to fighting games. They need to happen. And again, at the high skill level, these combos are actually the fundamental like structure or basics of everything else that you're going to do in the game. So practice your basic combos, do them often in matches. It's going to do way more damage than you think it's going to do because you're going to be doing several of them during a match. Don't try to win the game with one combo when you are still kind of in the beginning stage of the game, or the beginning stage of your journey where you're learning how to play. It's just not realistic, and it's not realistic at any skill level. Once you get good enough at the game where you can reliably do big combos, that's fantastic. You know, you love to see it. That's great. You're ascending beyond Super Saiyan. But at the average, above average, or even below average levels, you don't need to worry about long combos. So again, how to combo easily? You can do 3 to 4 button combinations by just linking together different attacks, or you can try mashing the same button over and over again, or maybe even throwing a direction in it. So like forward AAA, damn it, I said AAA again. So forward 333, or like backwards 333, or whatever the case may be. Now let's move on to blocking, and I've got some blocking open secrets to tell you. They're not really secrets, I'm just clickbaiting you, bro, let's go. But basically, to block, you want to hold back, you know, as the attack is landing, or even before then, and you'll automatically block. So if you want to block low, you do back and down in the diagonal direction, and you'll block low attacks. Now, the secret to blocking in Tekken is actually kind of hilarious. If you stand still and don't do any inputs on your controller, you're gonna auto block high attacks. And it's awesome. Like, you might think here, whoa, isn't that like OP or something? No, not at all. The game's designed around that. It's a core mechanic to the game. So in a lot of fighting games, when you are panicking or not sure what to do, you end up mashing buttons. It's a natural instinct. And you need to fight against that in Tekken. Because in Tekken, if you're panicking, a way to get out of that panic is to not press any buttons. Your character is trying to actively help you out, get out of that panic. And once you kind of ascend to a higher skill level or get more used to the game, you'll actually choose to not press any buttons. And that's how you know that Tekken is clicking in your brain. That's how you know you're becoming a great Tekken 8 player. When you're choosing to not press any buttons because you're recognizing your opponent, you're recognizing like their patterns of play and how they're going to attack and things like that. So yeah. The thing about Tekken also that you want to know is your default blocking, generally speaking, shouldn't be blocking low. So if you played other fighting games, especially like Street Fighter, nothing wrong with any of those other fighting games, they're great games, but you kind of naturally build a habit of blocking low because it's the safest block. In Tekken, your safest block is your regular block. Tekken has high-low mid attacks, and your safest option is always just regular blocking. And remember, if you're panicking, you just don't want to be pressing anything. Let's talk about a really great offensive tip that's going to win you matches on its own, and it sounds really silly, but you're going to have to trust me on this one. It works incredibly well. It's shocking how well it works. And the tip here is you want to be throwing a lot more than you think you should during a fight. And the way you throw opponents in Tekken, the easiest way you can do it is 1+3 at the same time if you're close to your opponent. So that's left punch, left kick, and you kind of just like let the animation happen. Now, there are fancier throws. You can have, direction input and throw input, or you can do different things when you're throwing in order to accomplish a different kind of throw. But kind of the easiest thing is to just like press the 2 throw buttons, 1+3. If you're throwing in like a forward step to get to your opponent, that might work as well. I like to just kind of like get up to my opponents, and while I'm pressing forward, I end up doing a throw. And the reason why this is so like comically good is because when you're playing normal people at Tekken, so people who are average, above average, or below average, they're not wired to really think that you're gonna come up to them and just throw them. It's just not a common behavior. And fighting game like AI doesn't really do that all that much. So you are preying, I guess, on the expectations of the guessing game that are a part of Tekken and all fighting games, because when you move up close to your opponent is thinking, if they are thinking, they're thinking, what should I be blocking? What could they be doing next? Like, what's the next move they could be doing? And you're catching them mid-thought and just throwing them. It's that simple. Your opponent can't stop your throw from happening if they're fast enough to press the throw input buttons. In most cases, if you're just throwing like a neutral throw and they cancel it out, it's not the end of the world. Like, it's fine. You move on. Maybe you throw them later in the match. But my tip here is be aggressive with your throws. Now, when I say that, I don't mean like I see my opponent like doing some sick ass combo, I'm just gonna walk in front of him while he punches me and try to do a throw. You gotta pick your timings, and your timings are really when you see your opponent winding down on their moves. You move in, you do the throw, and it's just free damage. I know this sounds incredibly stupid, but it will win you matches, and it will do tons of damage if you do multiple throws in a match. And it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. If your opponent has figured out what you're doing and they're stopping your throws, or it's just not working out for you, hey, maybe don't throw that opponent, right? Maybe they watch this video. Maybe this video has 6 billion views. Who knows? Let's talk about ducking and sidestepping next. So ducking and sidestepping is going to be used in a lot of maybe more advanced ways as you naturally get better at Tekken. It'll just become something that's a part of your toolbox. But in order for it to become a part of your toolbox, you need to start using it in some more basic ways. So when it comes to ducking, it's actually kind of hilarious. You can just duck under attacks that aren't going to connect with you if you're ducking. So like high attacks, just duck under them. So if you see an opponent constantly spamming high attacks, you can just duck and hit them back. It's great. It's cool. It's cool beans. Ducking is amazing because a lot of normal Tekken players aren't really going to be going in thinking like, what should I do if my opponent is ducking? Or, oh man, my opponent is ducking. Oh, they're not really thinking about that. They might eventually, at higher levels, not might, they will, but, up to the above average level, you're fine. So lots of ducking is great. The other thing is sidestepping. Sidestepping is great because it allows you to simply like get out of the way of a lot of attacks. It's hilarious. I love it. So, you know how they were going to do Street Fighter versus Tekken as a game? It's Tekken versus Street Fighter. Street Fighter as a Tekken was a real game. So one of the like funny memes back in the day around that was like, can't Tekken characters simply sidestep the fireballs? And they can. Whenever you see your opponent doing like laser attacks or other things like that, you can just sidestep it. Especially if they're doing like up close combos, a lot of them, you can just sidestep and then go ham on your opponent, attack them. Sidestepping is not like bulletproof because some attacks and some combos will have basically tracking on them and they'll track you as you sidestep. But again, this is like more of an advanced thing. What you need to know is like if you're panicking and like standing still isn't working for you, or you're like recovering off the ground, you can just sidestep. It's great. Sidestepping is great. All right, now moving on to heat. So heat is what I like to call a get out of jail free card. It is a meter that starts full every single round. You absolutely want to be using this thing, and at the high level, this meter is going to become essential to the meta, to the game. It can give your moves different properties. It's gonna change how people play Tekken, and it's gonna see some crazy advanced use. up to the above average level, you can use it in a much simpler way that isn't overly complicated. And honestly, you will get free wins because of this. So if you tap R1 or, god damn it, I'm using the wrong buttons again, aren't I? But if you tap R1 or right bumper on your controller, you will activate heat mode. And that's going to start burning your meter at the top of the screen, and you will do like a attack that has some armor and is generally pretty safe. So it's a get out of jail free card, because let's say your opponent is like throwing some punches or stuff, but they're kind of like at a distance, or they're not connecting, or whatever the case may be. You can just interrupt them by tapping your heat button, and you'll do that one little attack. Once you're in heat, oh, that sounds wrong. Once you're in heat though, you do chip damage to your opponents, and like I said, your moves will have different properties and things like that. But what you really want to care about is if you just hammer the heat button, you'll do like a heat combo, and it does so much damage. This thing, honestly, I could see them nerfing it one day because of how much damage it does. It's really great. Now, it's going to be something that the community evolves to learn to block over time, but until they do, this is such an easy tool in your arsenal. And so what you want to do is if somebody's attacking you, and again, they're kind of far away enough or their moves aren't landing, you start hammering your heat button and you'll just do an auto combo that does a lot of damage, and you can even recover some health with that, but don't worry about that aspect of it for our levels. So yeah, heat is a get out of jail free card. And I know some of you will come at me in the comments being like, why are you teaching people bad habits, this and that, you know, why are you using it in this way? This is so toxic. Like, first of all, there's nothing toxic about heat inherently. So let's not worry about that. And in terms of like bad habits and things like that, I'm not saying that this is how you should use the heat meter at all times. I'm saying when you're playing against normal Tekken players, above average, normal, or above average, average, and below average, the heat combo is an essential part of the toolbox and an easy way to win matches and to kind of get you out of tight situations. If you end up relying on it as a crutch, and if you end up abandoning all of the other systems of the game for it, yeah, of course you're going to lose. Like, people will catch on. It's not going to work. I'm not telling you this is how you should use the heat meter at all times. I'm telling you this is a get out of jail free option, and against normal players, it's an extremely valuable tool. Now, moving on really quickly to your rage art, that's basically by default the right trigger on your controller, and when you're at low enough health, you can activate this super move, if you will, this ultra move. It does a big combo, does a lot of damage, and you only really need to just connect with it in order to get its benefit. So it's kind of similar to heat in the sense of at normal levels, above average levels, below average levels, you can use this as a get out of jail free card, or you can use it as sort of free damage. There's obviously more advanced play you can do with rage arts, but it's really satisfying and really useful when you just see your opponent throwing out attacks. You hit the rage art, you get the rage art, and you win the match or just do a lot of damage, turn the tide. It's one of those tools in your toolbox, just like the rage meter. And again, I'm not saying this is the only way to use this. I'm saying for these kind of normal Tekken 8 levels, this is what you can use it for. Of course, you are free to experiment with it as much as you want, and as you gain more skill, you're free to incorporate it in different ways into your game. Like, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying this is another tool in your arsenal that can do a lot of damage and that can get you out of jail. Okay, so now let's move on to a fighting game topic that's really complicated, but there's no reason for it to be complicated. It's just one of those fighting game things that is maybe sometimes difficult to explain or causes confusion, so it kind of snowballs into this complex topic that really doesn't need to be that complex. And of course, I'm talking about frame data. So 2 questions right off the bat. What is frame data, and do you really need to know it? I'll answer the second question first. You absolutely do not need to know frame data. I'm sorry, anyone that tells you need to know frame data, they're not telling you the truth. You can get to some of the high strengths of any fighting game without knowing any frame data whatsoever, because if you are just naturally playing the game and improving and constantly working on yourself and constantly thinking about what you could do better or paying attention to the characters, you're just going to internalize all of that information. And if you're bad at processing numbers, then frame data is actually going to super confuse you. Now, I'm not saying frame data is bad. Do not get me wrong. I'm just telling you that the people that tell you frame data is necessary to be good at a fighting game, they're wrong. The frame data comes into effect when you're playing in tournaments, when you're, a high level player, when you're elite, when you're pro. If you're a normal Tekken player that's like above average and like the top 20% of players, you don't need frame data. But if you want to take your game to like a super high level, once you're already at a high level, sure, of course, frame data is helpful. Like, how can it not be helpful? So what is frame data? Well, honestly, like, different people explain it in different ways, and it's kind of a thing where, depending on how your brain works, you want a different explanation for it. So frame data is really just referring to how long moves last, or how long moves last until you can move again or get hit again by your opponents. So when you hear terms like frame advantage and things like that, really that's just referring to like, hey, is my opponent stuck in an animation and can I hit them, or am I stuck in an animation? So when people say like plus minus or frames are safe or unsafe, really all they're saying in like a shorthand way is like, can I hit you out of that move with my move? So like if your move takes 10 frames and my move takes more frames, you do the math and you figure out the frames and all of that stuff. You figure out who's going to recover from the move animation first. But honestly, like, again, you don't need that to be successful at the game. Oh, look, a Windows notification that probably showed up on the microphone. But if you do want to learn frame data, you can go into the training modes, you can go online. There's so many different ways that you can learn frame data. But when you're a beginner and when you're at the above average skill level or up to the above average skill level, it's not really something that you need. But if you do love numbers and you do love the sound of what it is, then by all means, like, go out there and research it. Maybe I'll even do a video on frame data. Like, frame data is something that is pretty important at the highest level of play. I would even say maybe integral to memorizing like frames of moves and things like that. But for everybody else, honestly, just don't sweat it. It's all good. You're gonna have fun with the game, you're gonna enjoy it, and you're gonna win without frame data. All right, now let's talk about how to pick a main. This is one of the most common questions in every single fighting game ever. How the hell do you pick which character to pick? Wait a minute, does that make sense? How the hell do you pick? Anyway, the thing is, you want to pick a character that you have fun with. Forget about the tier lists. The tier lists are opinions, man. It's very rare for a character to actually be total garbage. Sure, some games sometimes might put in a joke character because like, haha, that's fun or whatever, but usually in Tekken, you can be successful with anybody. People in both Tekken and Street Fighter have won world championships with some of the worst characters in the game. Quote unquote worst characters. So you want to pick with who you like, but how do you know who you like? Well, depends. If you have a lot of time on your hands and patience, just go through all the characters, do their arcade modes or go into training, try out some of their moves, all that good stuff. If you don't have a lot of time, we'll get to that in a second. But if you are trying out different characters, my kind of quote-unquote checklist for figuring out if I like characters is, just use them in matches, like against the AI or against ghosts first. Try to mash the single button combos, try to figure out some 3 or 4 button combos, try to figure out some basic moves from their movesets. And like, do you like their design? Do you like how they... I guess that sounds weird. I was gonna say, do you like how they sound? Do you like their presentation? If you like a character's presentation and the moves they're doing, you like them as well and you feel good about them, that's gonna give you that connection to that character. That's gonna make it easier to main them. So just try things out. Like, there's no pressure when you're playing by yourself in training mode or against ghosts or something like that. But if you don't have time to just try out a bunch of different characters, or if you just prefer to stick to a few characters without even bothering to try a bunch of characters, I'm just gonna go out and say start with Jin. And I know there's probably some Tekken Pro out there right now that's being like, why are you telling people to start with Jin? What are you doing? Start with Jin because Jin has some really easy mechanics that will help you learn the game. So if you boot up a game right now with Jin, go into training mode and just start hammering different 1 and 2 button combinations. So like, punch, 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 punch. And you'll see that it just leads to cool looking combos that do good damage. And you'll see that Jin just has a lot of moves that are flashy, but also useful, but also kind of like lay the groundwork for what Tekken is in a way. So if you think of Ryu as the groundwork for Street Fighter historically, although maybe that's Luke now with Street Fighter 6, if you think of Ryu as like the main Street Fighter guy, if you think of Scorpion or Sub-Zero as the main Mortal Kombat guy, you can think of Jin as kind of the main Tekken guy. Even if he's, not a main Tekken guy one day in the future or whatever the case may be, doing his moves, his simple stuff, will just teach you how to play the game. And you might have heard in the past that Jin is actually a very complicated character. That's not entirely true, especially in Tekken 8. Jin has a lot of stuff that's very easy to do. So that's why it's great to kind of learn the mechanics through Jin. And of course, like any Tekken character, playing them at a high level is always going to be complicated because, Tekken is a complicated ass game when you get to the highest levels. All right, now let's talk about how to air combo or juggle easily. So juggling is an essential part of Tekken, but the thing is, when you're playing normal Tekken with normal people, they're not going to know how to do those like 40% juggle combos, and you're not going to know how to do them either. So one thing to remember, characters have launchers. Launchers refer to moves that send your opponent up in the air, and once your opponent is up in the air, you can do crazy combos because they're helpless, right? The thing is, these combos are usually the most complicated stuff in the game, and if you're trying to train for one of these combos that does like 40% damage or something crazy like that, and you spend hours and hours and hours in training mode figuring it out and getting good with it, that's not going to guarantee that you can actually do it online, right? Doing it online or in person, it's a completely different beast, right? So online, the input timing might change a little bit. In person, there's the added pressure of just having like a person face-to-face that you're playing with. So what you want to actually do to air combo easily, and again, this is going to sound really stupid, is figure out in your training mode or like against the AI or ghosts, figure out which 3 or 4 button combination you can do when you launch somebody in the air. So to figure out how to launch somebody in the air, you can just check your move list for the word launcher. And then all you have to do while they're in the air, just start trying different button combinations. You can also like look it up online if you really want to, but by doing it yourself, you are going through the process of learning and you're naturally improving yourself. So when you send somebody up in the air, even if it looks dumb or doesn't do a lot of damage, it's really important for you to do basic combos to start with. And again, these aren't optimal combos. These aren't perfect combos. These combos like might look bad, but things like this make a huge difference when it's normal people playing Tekken. And it's kind of like the throw thing where on its own, a very simple air combo doesn't necessarily do a lot of damage, but as a tool in your arsenal and something that you can pull off multiple times in a match, it's very useful. I want you to be confident in your simple inputs because you cannot ascend to elite level play if you can't do the basics on a whim, like whenever you feel like it. So again, if you want to juggle easily, learn how to launch an opponent in the air with your character from the moves list, and then in practice mode or against ghosts or AI, all you got to do is just try different button combinations and see what strings together. It's really not complicated. You'll get it within like, I don't know, like 5-10 minutes tops, and then you'll be able to pull those off in real matches. So I know this has been a lot, but I just want to reiterate some of the most important advice, or what I think is the most important advice from the start. Do not compare yourself to pros and do not try to mimic their meta and their strategies when you're first starting out. It does not apply to you. It's not a part of the game that you need to worry about. There's nothing wrong with you like enjoying pro content or even like, watching their guides or following or seeing their advice, whatever the case may be. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying, ignore pros. Pros are bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you need to be focusing on yourself and you shouldn't be comparing yourself to somebody that's like the Michael Jordan or the LeBron James or the Messi of the Tekken 8 world. Do not do that. If you do that, you are lowering your chances of succeeding at Tekken 8. Thanks everybody for watching. I am Dr. Poplove, your weirdo geek bro. Oh my god, this was so much Tekken. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos and all that good stuff. And if you have Tekken questions, just throw them in the chat. Let's get community stuff going. Like, I'm happy to answer whatever I can. I'm not a pro player myself. I'm a pretty, I guess, normal / above average quote unquote gamer. So I'll help out as much as I can. Yeah, like, subscribe, notification bell, all the YouTube stuff. Bye.